Do you sometimes feel like making something, but you're not really sure what you want to make? Maybe you have an idea, but you're not sure if it's a good one? Do you hold yourself back from sharing what you do, or even starting projects in the first place? If you're anything like me, very often you sit down at your desk and you're like, hey, I kind of want to make something, and then you get stuck. There's this channel on YouTube called TheQuartering. It has 600,000 subscribers. It's mostly anti-SJW clickbait, criticizing anything even slightly progressive happening in video games, movies, or the world. That's not a focus of my video, but there will be some lovely links in the description if you want a glimpse into all of that. Anyway, back to my point. TheQuartering posts a lot. And when I say he posts a lot, I mean that sometimes this guy uploads 5 videos a day. As a content creator, there's something strangely terrifying and deeply unsettling when I look at the absurd amount of stuff that this guy posts. How can I even compete with this? He churns out videos at an industrial pace. His YouTube channel is like a factory. So why am I even talking about this guy? There is something profoundly disturbing about this channel. The content is empty and painfully slow. It lacks depth, it lacks substance. Even his Gamergate anger falls flat and sometimes feels more like a performance than real outrage. Even his ignorance is soulless. It's disheartening to see someone with content this empty getting so many views. And not only is his content bad, but his creative process is hollow. I think a lot about what I make even before I start making it. My creative process is anchored in self-reflection. Sometimes I think too much. I want to share something with the world that makes me feel accomplished, that makes me feel like I've made a contribution that will mean something. I want to add an interesting perspective. I put a lot of pressure on myself to live up to these very high standards. TheQuartering doesn't do this. He just picks a current subject that he thinks could make young, lonely gamer guys angry, and then he talks about it. And there's nothing inherently wrong with making rapid-fire videos about current topics. It's a video format that can be very good for news updates and media commentary. But TheQuartering has no real direction. Not only does he often repeat the same points again and again, there is no emotional depth to what he's saying. There's no script, there's no thought, there's no nuance. It's just footage of a bitter dude slowly stumbling around the internet saying that progressive stuff is bad. He makes content without thinking. He doesn't think, he just does. And maybe deep down, I'm kind of jealous of his process. Sometimes when I'm caught up thinking so hard about what my next subject should be, agonizing over how to form a coherent point, I kind of wish that I was able to have this spontaneous self-confidence and complete lack of self-doubt that TheQuartering seems to have mastered. Will people like what I make? Will anyone care? TheQuartering doesn't really discriminate between his thoughts. He just posts all of his takes on everything, no matter how irrational or intellectually empty they are. I kind of have the opposite way of functioning. Even once I finish something that's taken me hours, I think really hard before uploading it. I think of the effect it could have on people. I think of each word and how I phrase my thoughts. I think of how it could be misinterpreted or how it could be used in a way that wasn't intended. Unfortunately, this isn't always a good thing. TheQuartering is one extreme. He posts everything, no matter how empty or thoughtless. I'm on the other. I hold myself back because I judge my own ideas so harshly that a lot of them don't even make it to the editing stage. I brought this up with my psychologist. I said, hey, I kind of have an issue. I make a lot of stuff, but I have a really hard time sharing what I do with other people. Why is that? What's wrong with me? He didn't really give me an answer. Psychologists don't really give you answers, and the best ones just kind of show you a different way of thinking, and they let you find the answer yourself. He said that making things is kind of like building a boat. Imagine that you're on an island, and you've been working on this boat for years. You've been crafting every inch of this thing. You've been sculpting beautiful statues to decorate it, there's hand-woven rugs, this boat has become exquisite. It started off as a raft, but over the years you've transformed it into something breathtaking. The thing is, if you never sail out to sea, then what's the point of the boat? Boats aren't made to sit in the harbour, they need to sail. Ever since he said that, it's stuck with me. Even though I've started posting stuff now, I still take my creative responsibility very seriously. When I talk about creative responsibility, I mean thinking about the impacts that what we've made will have on the world before sharing it. TheQuartering has no notion of creative responsibility. I don't think he really reflects on what he should make, he just has an idea and he does it. There's no middle ground. He's the simplest reactionary I have ever seen. It's point A to point B. And although I sometimes envy his unfounded self-confidence and his ability to share his voice without a second thought, I'm really happy that I'm not this guy. His content is empty, and his opinion is stale. He just posts this stuff to get views. Empty, hollow views. Freedom of speech is great, but I take my freedom of speech seriously. I want to take responsibility for everything that I put out in this world. I want to be able to look back in 5 years and think, I could have done this better, but the underlying message is okay. I'm not ashamed of what I put out there because I didn't put it out there to marginalize a group of people, or to make things worse for people who already have a hard time. I put this out there to punch up. I put this out there to say something important. The stuff that TheQuartering makes is not making the world a better place. Pretty much the opposite, actually. But it's so fucking bad that I hope that some people with better ideas than him will see this video and realize that they have the potential to make something way better than this hollow, empty bullshit. TheQuartering gives us an example of what not to do. TheQuartering is proof that you could do better. What should we make? And how can we create responsibly? I don't really have the answer to that. But maybe what we can learn from TheQuartering is that talking about marginalized groups of people that you don't understand because they make you uncomfortable is a bad idea. Not only does this process produce ignorant garbage, but his lack of knowledge or passion about his subjects produces content that is intellectually and emotionally empty. From a purely creative and artistic perspective, there is nothing interesting about this channel. His videos lack any kind of depth or humanity. The channel banner says that he loves comics, video games, and tabletop games. But I can't feel that love at all. Maybe if he focused more on what he loves so much about games and comics, his content wouldn't be so bad. For a long time, I was convinced that humanity was a destructive species, and that we acted like a parasite on the Earth's surface. And although this makes a lot of sense in the context of climate change and capitalism, I don't really think that that's all we're good for anymore. Not only are we capable of massive destruction, we are capable of awesome creativity. We are an inherently creative species, just like spiders creating webs. We love making things. But unlike spiders, we don't create webs just to catch flies. We have the potential to make things so much better than what TheQuartering makes. The only function of his channel is to pull young guys into this reactionary web. They start out thinking that they're just watching someone who loves games. But they're not. They're watching someone who wants to make them angry about feminism and gay people and progressive politics. Don't be like TheQuartering. Create a web to make people think. Maybe go and talk about how a video game actually made you feel, how it changed your perspective, how a TV show moved you. Talk about your personal experience with something that a lot of people haven't experienced, but that you understand because you have experienced it, and you've thought about it, responsibly. And if you are a marginalized person, and you live systemic oppression daily, when you feel the urge to make something, don't hold back. Make that thing. Your voice and perspective is important, especially if it's one that's not often heard. And when it comes to sharing what you do, you don't have to. I know it's scary to put yourself out there. It's okay to feel disorganized, it's okay to feel lost. I believe in you. I believe that you have a perspective that is so much more interesting than what this guy gives us. This guy shares so much garbage with the world. When you're submerged with self-doubt and anxiety about your own work, try and remember that your ideas and perspectives are probably a hell of a lot more interesting than his. And don't hold back just because you think that they aren't good enough. Remember the image of the boat. Don't let your boat get to a point where it's so weighed down with things that you've added to it that it's too heavy to sail. Sometimes you have to trust yourself and share what you make. I can assure you that it will be so much better than what the Quartering has to offer us.